Welcome to Starbound. My name's the Voice Ogre, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new stories of Sunspire Academy, which I happen to do, and Freyrin and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story.
Grothmog the Iron Skull, scourge of the eastern marches and breaker of 7 kingdoms, had expected many things from the Human Knight Academy. Polished armor, perfect formations, enthusiastic marching, humiliation rituals, sadistic commanders, perhaps some light sobbing from the younger recruits. What he had not expected was a student juggling live scorpions while reciting battle poetry to a beat.
"Is that normal?"
he rumbled to his guide, a cheerful woman named Professor Wreath, who seemed entirely too pleased with the chaos surrounding them.
"Oh, that's just today's warm-up,"
she chirped.
"Reciting poetry to a beat helps teach students to stay synchronized while marching, and the beat keeps soldiers inspired. The scorpions are to teach recruits to multitask, to stay inspired while doing something extremely dangerous."
Grothmog didn't look convinced.
"Wait until you see advanced emotional warfare."
Wreath smiled.
"But why show me this?"
Grothmog asked suspiciously.
"We find that inviting potential adversaries for a tour is the most efficient form of psychological deterrence,"
Professor Wreath said brightly.
"Saves so much trouble on the battlefield. After all, the best victory is a battle never fought, don't you think?"
Grothmog's massive green hand tightened on his war axe. He had come here to mock these soft humans, to gather intelligence on their pathetic training methods. Instead, he watched in mounting horror as 2 blindfolded students dueled with real swords, using their hearing and other senses than sight to win. This was wrong. Combat was about strength, honor, and crushing your enemies beneath iron boots. It was not about whatever this was. They passed a courtyard where students sat in a circle, eyes closed, while a dragon, an actual dragon, prowled around them. One student's eyes snapped open just as the beast's jaws descended. She rolled aside, grabbed its thick whiskers, and used its own momentum to flip it onto its back.
"Excellent spatial awareness, Miranda,"
called an instructor.
"But you open your eyes. That's points off."
"The dragon has anxiety issues,"
Miranda protested, scratching the beast's belly as it purred like a house cat.
"I could feel it in its breathing pattern."
Grothmog stumbled.
"They psychoanalyze their enemies."
"Oh, yes,"
Professor Wreath said brightly.
"Know thy enemy's deepest fears, and you never need to draw a blade. Though we do teach proper blade work, too. Speaking of which, duck."
A sword whistled over Grothmog's head. He spun to see 2 students engaged in what could only be described as aggressive philosophy.
"Your premise is flawed,"
one shouted, parrying desperately.
"Existence precedes essence. But consciousness creates reality,"
her opponent countered, their blade work creating a steel symphony.
"Therefore, I have already won this fight in 3 alternate timelines."
"Prove it."
"I don't need to. You just admitted alternate timelines exist."
The first student groaned and lowered her sword.
"Damn, you got me."
They high-fived and wandered off, debating quantum mechanics.
"Is this some goddamn joke?"
Grothmog said.
"What curse wrought this awful speech? What are they talking about?"
Wreath shrugged.
"I wasn't here for the full conversation."
Grothmog's eye twitched. In orc culture, warriors trained by lifting boulders and headbutting trees. These humans trained by having existential crises at each other? By doing overly tedious acrobatics? The true horror came at the dining hall. Grothmog expected a peaceful meal. Instead, he witnessed lunch duel, a tradition where students had to defend their food like rabid wolves crossed with tactical geniuses. A boy no older than 12 constructed a fortress from stale breadsticks. A girl with braids turning her boiled soup into a projectile weapon system to keep scoundrels away from briskets. One lanky teen had somehow convinced 3 others that his empty tray contained invisible delicacies, and they were now fighting over literally nothing.
Food scarcity training.
Professor Reith explained.
Also teaches resource management, tactical deception, and the importance of breakfast.
But the worst was yet to come. In a small training room, Grothmog found her. A girl barely in her teens, perhaps 14, with messy black hair and eyes like storm clouds. She stood before 3 adult instructors, all of whom looked deeply uncomfortable. "Now then," the girl said in a voice far too weary for her age. "Who can tell me why getting stabbed in the heart isn't necessarily fatal?" One instructor raised a tentative hand.
Because metaphorical hearts can't bleed, yes?
"Exactly," the girl beamed. "The heart everyone aims for isn't the organ. It's the idea of who you are. Kill that, and the body's just aftermath. This is why existential dagger combat is so effective. Observe." She produced a normal-looking knife. It wasn't particularly long or even sharpened. Yet the instructor stepped back. 3 seconds later, all 3 were on the ground. Not bleeding, but somehow looking more wounded than if she'd used actual steel. One was quietly crying. Another stared at his hands like he'd never seen them before. "I didn't mean it," the girl assured them, helping them up. "The truth hurts, but healing starts with honesty. Same time tomorrow?" They nodded frantically and fled.
That,
Professor Reith said proudly,
is Siren Gallowglass, youngest instructor at Academy history. She developed an entirely new combat discipline based on weaponizing personal growth. She's teaching our other instructors her methods right now.
Grothmog had seen enough. These weren't warriors. They were lunatics with swords. Therapeutic, philosophical, dragon-petting lunatics who treated violence like a particularly aggressive form of couples counseling. He left immediately. His report to the Orcish High Command simple and direct.
The humans have gone mad. They fight with their feelings. They duel with doubt. Their children are tiny prophets of psychological warfare. Never speak of this place again.
But Rothgar, son of Grothmog, age 16 and sturdy as a dwarf's thunderloo, heard his father's ranting and thought,
That sounds incredible.
Which is how, 3 weeks later, he found himself standing at the Academy gates with a forged letter of recommendation and a head full of dreams about proving his father wrong. The gate guard, an elderly man who looked like he'd been pickled in cynicism, barely glanced at his papers. "This forgery's terrible," the guard said flatly. "The lettering lacks emotional conviction, and whoever signed this has clearly never felt joy before in his life." Rothgar's heart sank. But, the guard continued, stamping the papers anyway, "you've got the desperate for a change look down perfectly. Plus, you came alone, which shows either bravery or stupidity. But we can work with both. That's the real entrance exam. Get in." Rothgar's heart sank.
Wait, you're letting me in even though...
"Orc, eh?" The guard mused, ignoring his confusion. "It's been a while since we've had one. You any good at crying?"
What? Orcs don't cry.
"You will." The guard stamped his papers. "Report to Master Elkthorn for a squad assignment. Try not to die. The paperwork's murder." Rothgar squared his shoulders and marched through the gates, convinced he'd master whatever madness these humans called training. He was wrong. He was so wrong. Rothgar's first mistake was assuming the mop was just a mop.
This is your combat partner for today,
Master Elkthorn announced. looking like someone had constructed a scarecrow from disappointment and gave it tenure. The old man's one good eye gleamed with what Rothgar would later recognize as sadistic glee.
Defeated.
Rothgar stared at the mop propped against the wall. Around him, other first-day students faced similarly mundane opponents. A hat stand, a particularly aggressive teapot, and what appeared to be someone's lunch.
This is ridiculous,
Rothgar muttered, reaching for the mop. The mop reached back. What followed was the most humiliating 3 minutes of Rothgar's life. The mop, because of course it was enchanted. Everything here was enchanted or cursed or both, fought with the fluid grace of a master martial artist. It swept his legs, jabbed at pressure points, and at one point managed to clean his face while simultaneously choking him.
You're fighting what you expect to fight.
Master Elkthorn called out, sipping tea from a cup that occasionally screamed.
But what if your enemy refuses to be what you expect?
Rothgar, now pinned beneath the mop in a position that defied several laws of physics, gasped.
How do I beat something that shouldn't exist?
First rule of human combat.
A voice said above him.
Stop trying to beat things.
The voice belonged to Sirin Gallowglass, though Rothgar didn't know that yet. All he knew was that a girl younger than him, maybe 14 or 15, with the posture of a question mark and the eyes of someone who had seen too much, was offering him a hand up.
I am supposed to defeat it,
Rothgar protested, accepting the help.
Are you?
Sirin tilted her head.
Master Elkthorn said defeated, but he never said what it was. Maybe it isn't the mop.
Rothgar blinked.
That makes no sense.
Welcome to the Academy.
She produced what looked like a hair ribbon, but moved like liquid mercury.
Watch.
She approached her own opponent, a potted plant that had already strangled 2 students. Instead of attacking, she sat down cross-legged and began talking to it.
You're not really angry, are you?
She mused.
You're scared. Probably haven't been watered properly in weeks. And now they want you to fight? Oh, that's not fair.
The plant's strangling vines slowly relaxed.
Tell you what,
Sirin continued, producing a water flask.
Let's call this a draw. I'll make sure you get proper care and you stop choking people. Deal?
The plant rustled with what might have been agreement. She watered it carefully, and its leaves turned a healthier shade of green. Master Elkthorn clapped slowly.
Gallowglass passes, as usual. As usual. Gallowglass passes, as usual.
He surveyed the rest of the students, most still locked in combat with furniture.
The rest of you have until sunset, or until the mop gets bored and actually tries.
Rothgar stared at the girl who'd just negotiated a peace treaty with the houseplant.
How did you know?
Everything fights for a reason.
Sirin shrugged.
Find the reason, you find the solution.
Or you get stabbed. Sometimes both. She studied him with those storm cloud eyes.
You're the Orc Prince, aren't you? Grothmog's son.
How did?
You're the only orc here. You have his jaw structure. And you're wearing boots worth more than most students' yearly tuition. She grinned, and it was sharp as winter moonlight.
I'm Sirin. I'll be your squad leader, apparently.
Squad leader? But I haven't even...
Failed the entrance exam?
Yeah, that's sort of the point. She gestured to where Master Elkthorn was now watching a student try to reason with a homicidal hat stand. Everyone fails day 1. The question is how you fail. You failed with curiosity instead of rage. That's promising. Over the next weeks, Rothgar discovered that everything at the Academy was a test disguised as madness. Combat empathy training involved getting punched in the feelings, literally. Students learned to project their emotional states as weapons. Rothgar watched Siren produce a practice dummy to splinters by aggressively believing it needed therapy.
But it's not alive,
He protested. Doesn't matter, Kayla explained. She was part of their squad. A quiet girl who wore light-like armor and smiled like she was apologizing for existing. Everything wants to be understood, even things that aren't things. Brannet Coalfoot, their dwarven squad mate who'd been expelled from 5 academies for what he called aggressive creativity, demonstrated by convincing a training sword that it was actually a bouquet of flowers. It promptly sprouted petals.
reality,
Brannet explained cheerfully.
is just consensus. Change the consensus, change the reality. That's insane,
Rothgar said.
Yes.
Nico agreed. He was their last squad mate, a runaway noble who treated his crossbow like a therapy animal. But it's a useful insane. Do you know how many fights you can avoid by convincing your enemy's weapon it's actually a fish? The academic courses were worse. Battlefield haiku as psychological warfare taught students to compose poetry so bad it caused actual physical pain. Strategic cowardice reframed running away as a high art form. Advanced paradox fighting gave Rothgar nosebleeds just from the reading material. But the worst, or best, he couldn't decide, was when they actually worked. During a mock battle, Rothgar faced an older student wielding a sword that leaked shadows. Traditional orc training said, meet strength with strength. But human training...
Your sword shadow is very impressive,
Rothgar said, dodging instead of blocking.
Must have taken years to master.
The student hesitated. Yes, thank you?
But you're holding it wrong.
What? No, I'm not.
Are you sure? Because from here, it looks like you're compensating for an old wrist injury. Probably from trying to learn without proper guidance.
The student glanced at his grip. The moment of doubt was enough. Rothgar's practice blade found its mark. Not the student's body, but the shadow sword itself, which flickered with uncertainty.
See?
Rothgar pressed on, remembering Siren's lessons.
The shadow responds to confidence, but you are not confident. You're scared. Scared I've noticed something everyone else missed.
The shadow sword sputtered out entirely. The student stared at his empty hand, then at Rothgar. How did you... That's not fair! You can't just talk someone's weapon out of existence! First time? Siren called from where she was fighting 3 students simultaneously while composing a grocery list. He's new. He'll learn to be more subtle. But subtlety wasn't what saved them when the training turned real. The Whispering Woods were supposed to be a controlled environment. The Academy used them for survival tests. 3 days, minimal supplies, maximum creativity required. Rothgar's squad had made camp by a stream, and Brannet was trying to convince fish that they wanted to be dinner. It's not working, Nico observed, clutching his crossbow. That's because fish doesn't have existential dread, Kayla said softly. Try offering them purpose instead.
What purpose could a fish possibly?
Rothgar stopped. The forest had gone quiet. Not normal quiet. The kind of quiet that meant predators were holding their breath. Siren was already moving, her whip-like sword uncoiling with a sound like silk over steel. Brannet, Flowers, Kayla, Lighthouse, Nico! Already counting, Nico whispered, his crossbow loaded with bolts that gleamed with equations. Rothgar didn't understand the shorthand yet, but he understood danger. His hand found his sword, not the practice blade, but the real steel the Academy insisted everyone carry, quote-unquote, for emergencies. The scouts came from 3 directions at once. Not Academy scouts. Those wore the black and silver of the Adamant Legion, his father's allies. They moved with orcish discipline and elven grace, a combination that should have been unstoppable. Should have been. Branett stomped his foot, and every weapon in 30 feet suddenly sprouted flowers. Beautiful, confusing, absolutely ridiculous flowers that smelled like a grandmother's hug. The scouts stumbled, their perfect formation breaking as they stared at their transformed weapons. Kayla raised her hands, and light erupted. Not harsh, but warm, comforting. The kind of light that made you want to tell the truth and maybe cry a little. 2 scouts dropped their flowered weapons entirely, overcome by memories of home. Nico's crossbow sang mathematics. Bolts flew in impossible trajectories, each one calculated to disable, not kill. They struck armor joints, weapon hilts, the exact spot on a boot that would make someone need to sit down and reconsider life choices. And Siren danced. Her whip sword wasn't just a weapon, it was a conversation. Each strike asked a question. Why are you here? What were you told? What do you actually want? One scout found himself tangled not in steel, but in his own doubts. Another tried to attack but stopped mid-swing, suddenly uncertain why he was fighting children in a forest.
Squad 9, form up!
Rothgar heard himself shout, using the Academy's designation.
Defensive pattern therapy circle!
It was a ridiculous name for a formation, but it worked. They stood back to back, each covering the others. But their defense wasn't about shields or armor. It was about presence. About being so confusingly, aggressively human that violence became complicated.
Please stop,
Kayla called out, and somehow made it sound like she was doing them a favor.
we don't want to hurt you, and we're making this very philosophically challenging.
They're children,
One scout muttered, lowering his flower-covered sword.
we're hunting children. Dangerous children.
His commander snapped, but even he sounded uncertain.
Oh, we're extremely dangerous,
Siren agreed cheerfully.
we know how to make you think.
Horrible, really.
The Academy should be ashamed. Would you like some tea?
Branett makes excellent trail tea.
I do not.
Branett protested.
You do when you convince the water it wants to be tea.
The standoff might have ended peacefully. Should have, even. But then Rothgar recognized the commander's voice under the helm.
Uncle Morik?
The commander's helm turned toward him.
Rothgar, blood and stones, what are you doing here? Learning,
Rothgar said simply.
Father didn't mention sending kill squads after students. We are not.
Morik pulled off his helmet, revealing the scarred face Rothgar had known since childhood.
Your father thinks you've been corrupted, brainwashed. He is mobilizing half the clans to rescue you. By attacking children. By destroying the corruption at its source.
Morik's expression hardened.
Stand aside, nephew. You don't understand what this place does to people. I understand perfectly.
Rothgar stepped forward, and his squad moved with him. Not behind him, with him.
It teaches you to question, to think, to find strength and understanding instead of just anger. Listen to yourself.
Morik gestured at the transformed weapons, the crying scouts, the general chaos.
This isn't combat. It's madness.
Yes,
Siren said quietly, and it works. She moved, not to attack, but to kneel by one of the disabled scouts. The man flinched, but she merely helped him to sit up.
you have children.
She said. It wasn't a question.
2 daughters. You're worried that this war will orphan them.
The scout's eyes widened.
How could you possibly?
The locket in your hand. You've been clutching it since the flowers appeared. The way that you fight, it's protective, it's not aggressive. You are not here for glory. You're here because someone told you that we were a threat to your family.
She looked up at Morik.
We're not.
We're just students learning that strength comes in many forms. Some of them involve flowers.
And existential dread.
Brannet added helpfully. And math, Nico muttered. And the understanding that light doesn't have to burn. Kayla finished. Morik stared at them. 5 teenagers who just disabled his entire scouting unit without killing anyone. With flowers and philosophy and whatever Kayla's light thing was.
This proves nothing,
he said finally.
Tricks and words won't stop what's coming. Your father leads an army, Rothgar. A real army. Then we will meet him with real strength.
Rothgar replied.
The humankind.
Morik gathered his scouts, those who could walk, and retreated. But his parting words chilled the forest.
You have 3 days, maybe 4. After that, the academy burns.
After they left, Rothgar's squad stood in silence. Finally, Brannet said,
So, anyone else think that we should probably tell someone about the approaching army?
Master Elkhorn knew that they were coming before we did, Siren said with absolute certainty. The Academy doesn't do accidents. This wasn't an ambush. This was our final exam for applied crisis de-escalation.
We were being tested?
Rothgar asked. When aren't we? Siren countered. Did you notice how they found us exactly when we settled in? How they came in perfect formation for us to dismantle? The Academy probably invited them.
That's insane, Nico said. That's education.
Kayla corrected softly.
We passed, by the way. No one died, several people reconsidered their life choices, and Brannet invented combat flowers. Extra credit all round.
They recited together. Victory is optional. Growth is mandatory.
I hate our school,
Nico muttered.
No, you don't,
Siren said. You love it. That's why you're terrified. You found something worth protecting. She was right, Rothgar realized. In just weeks, the Academy had become more a home than his father's iron halls ever were. These people, these beautiful, insane, brilliant humans, had become family.
We should head back, he said. If my father's coming, the Academy needs to prepare.
Prepare? Siren grinned. Rothgar, you still don't understand. The Academy's been preparing for something like this since it was founded. Why do you think they teach us to weaponize empathy?
Because it works.
Because, she said, starting the march home. Nothing defeats an army quite like making it question why it's an army in the first place. Master Elkthorn received news of the approaching army the way he received everything, with tea and mild disappointment in the universe's lack of creativity.
Another army.
He sighed, adjusting his eye patch.
How tedious. Still, I suppose it's good practice.
He stood, addressing the assembled academy.
Classes are suspended. Everyone to the walls.
To defend? The first year asked nervously.
To watch,
Elkthorn corrected.
Defense implies that they are a threat. They are not. They are a teaching opportunity.
The students filed out. Hundreds of them, from 10-year-old prodigies to grizzled seniors who'd learned to make reality negotiable. They lined the walls, not with weapons drawn, but with the calm of people who'd faced worse things than death. They'd faced themselves. Rothgar found his squad's position. Below, the horizon darkened with his father's forces. Thousands of orcs, allied elves, even some rogue dwarves who thought the Academy had gone too far in muddling the natural order.
That's a lot of people who want us dead,
Nico observed. Want us changed, Siren corrected. Dead is just the method that they've chosen.
Comforting.
I wasn't trying to be. Grothmog himself rode at the head. And even from here, Rothgar could feel his father's rage. It radiated like heat from forge work, the kind of anger that had crushed kingdoms. But the Academy had crushed harder things than kingdoms. It had crushed certainty.
Students of the Academy!
Grothmog's voice boomed across the field.
I am Grothmog the Iron Skull. I have come for my son and the corruption that you call education. Surrender him, disband your madness, and I may show you mercy.
Master Elkhorn sipped his tea.
May,
He tisked.
such uncertain language. Brannet, be a dear and fix that.
Brannick grinned and cupped his hands around his mouth.
He means he's scared of us.
The words rippled across the field, carried by Academy training, and suddenly every orc heard not Brannett's interpretation, but their own doubts. Was Grothmog scared? Why else bring an army against a school?
Silence!
Grothmog roared.
I'll have no word twisting. Face us with steel, or face destruction!
Counteroffer!
Master Elkthorn called back, his voice somehow carrying without effort.
Face yourselves! Much more frightening than steel, I assure you.
He set down his teacup and made a simple gesture. Every student moved at once. What happened next would be debated in military academies for generations, though none would quite believe it. The academy students didn't charge. They didn't form battle lines or raise shields. They performed. Kayla and her fellow Lightweavers created an aurora across the battlefield. Not blinding, but revealing. Every soldier saw themselves reflected in the light, saw their doubts and dreams and the faces of those they'd left behind. The sound students, and yes, that was a discipline, began the battle harmony. Not a war chant, but a lullaby. The kind mothers sang to frightened children. It was a simple question. What are you fighting for? Brannett's botanical squad convinced the grass itself to grow in patterns that spelled out uncomfortable truths. Your leaders fear children. Strength without thought is just violence. When did you last ask yourselves, why? And the Academy's fighters, they fought like humans. Which is to say, they cheated reality. Siren led the charge, if you could call it that. She and her combat philosophers walked, not ran, walked, straight toward the enemy lines. Their weapons were drawn, but they used them to have conversations.
You there!
Siren pointed her whip sword at a massive orc warrior.
You're favoring your left side.
Old injury? Let me guess, training accident when you were young. Someone told you to be strong, so you never let it heal properly. The orc stumbled. How could she know that? I have one too, she continued, rolling her shoulder. Except mine's emotional. You want to compare? I bet mine's worse. Across the field, similar exchanges erupted. Academy students didn't clash with the army. They integrated with it, like water finding cracks in stone. They asked questions. They offered observations. They made fighting so psychologically complex that half the army forgot they were supposed to be attacking. One elf warrior found himself in a deep discussion about the nature of immortality with a 12-year-old who fought with soap bubbles and showed possible futures. A dwarf berserker stopped mid-charge because a student complimented his axe, then asked about the smith who made it, then got him talking about his daughter who wanted to be a smith too.
This is what we do.
Rothgar explained to a confused orc soldier who tried to attack him but was now sitting on the ground, reconsidering his life choices.
Humans don't fight wars. We fight the concept of war itself. That makes no sense. Welcome to humanity. Fuck yeah.
But Grothmog would not be deterred by philosophy. He carved through the confusion, his ancient war axe cleaving reality back into simple shapes. Strength was strength. Steel was steel. His son was corrupted and needed saving. He found Rothgar in the center of the chaos, standing with his squad.
Son,
Grothmog growled.
end this madness. Come home. I am home.
Rothgar replied.
These humans have poisoned your mind. They have freed it.
Rothgar drew his sword, not to attack, but to show. The blade gleamed with new runes, each one a lesson learned.
Father, I came here to prove the humans are weak, but they are not weak. They are different. They find strength in understanding, in connection, in being clever enough to make violence unnecessary. Violence is always necessary.
Grothmog raised his axe.
It is the foundation of order!
No, Siren said quietly, stepping beside Rothgar. Fear is the foundation of your order. Fear that without violence, you're nothing. But you're wrong. She did something that stopped even Grothmog cold. She dropped her weapon. I'm 15 years old, she said. I weigh maybe half of what you do. By every traditional measure, you could destroy me. But you won't.
You dare.
Because you're not a monster. She stepped closer. You are a father who loves his son, who saw him changing and got scared, who brought an army because you don't know any other way to show that you care. Grothmog's axe wavered. I understand, Siren continued. My father was like you. All strength, no flexibility. It broke him in the end. It broke us. Her voice carried old pain made into wisdom. Don't let it break you too.
You know nothing of me, child.
I know you haven't slept well since Rothgar left. I know that you've been watching the night sky, wondering if you failed him. I know that the armor you wear isn't for protection. It's to hold yourself together. She said it with absolute certainty, though Rothgar noticed a faint tremor run through her hands. Feeling someone else's pain so clearly, even to use it, was never without a price. Grothmog stared at her. How? Because that's what armor's really for. She gestured at the battlefield, where his army was dissolving into a massive therapy session. Though her voice carried a weight that spoke of personal cost. We all wear it. The question is, are you brave enough to take it off? For a long moment, the scourge of the eastern marches stood frozen. Then, with a sound like mountains shifting, he lowered his axe.
I came to save my son,
he said quietly.
You did,
Rothgar said.
Just not how you expected.
The aftermath was stranger than the battle. Grothmog stayed for dinner. He sat in the Academy's dining hall, watching lunch duel with the expression of someone reconsidering every life choice. The student had just convinced another student's sandwich that it wanted to be a pizza.
This is insane.
Yes, Master Elkthorn agreed, pouring tea.
But it's applicable insane. Did you know how many sieges have been ended by convincing the enemy supplies to be something else? That is not how reality works. Reality is more flexible than you think.
Elkthorn gestured at where Rothgar was teaching Orcish war forms to his squad, while they taught him interpretive dance combat.
Your son understands now. He has changed. He has grown. There is a difference.
Grothmog watched his son laugh. Really laugh. As Brannet accidentally turned his own boots into flowers. When was the last time he'd heard Rothgar laugh like that?
The other clans won't understand,
Grothmog said finally.
They'll say that I've gone soft, weak.
Good, Siren said, joining them uninvited because that's what she did. Let them. Then teach them otherwise.
You want me to, what? Send orc children here?
Why not? I already have one, and he's doing quite well.
He cried during interpretive dance combat,
Elkthorn noted. Everyone cries during interpretive dance combat, Siren countered. That's rather the point. Grothmog looked between them. The old human who turned madness into method, and the young girl who'd fought with wisdom instead of steel.
What would you teach them?
He asked carefully.
The same thing that we teach everyone, Master Alkthorn said. That strength has many forms. That the best victory is the one where everyone wins. That sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is to think.
And feelings, Siren added. We're very big on feelings here.
I noticed,
Grothmog said dryly.
Your students turned my berserkers into a support group.
They needed it. Have you seen how much repressed trauma the average berserker carries? It's genuinely concerning. That night, Grothmog the Iron Skull, breaker of kingdoms, signed a treaty with the school. Not a surrender, an enrollment form.
Start with 12, he said. Volunteers only, and if you break them... We'll break them properly, Master Alkthorn assured him, into better shapes.
As Grothmog prepared to leave, Rothgar walked him to the gates.
I'm proud of you,
Grothmog said quietly.
I don't understand what you've become, but I am proud. I'm still your son,
Rothgar said.
Just more. These humans and their feelings.
Grothmog shook his head.
Next you'll tell me that violence isn't the answer. Oh, it is an answer. Just usually not the best one. Do you want to know what it is? What?
Rothgar grinned.
Understanding the question.
Grothmog left wondering about philosophical warriors and emotional warfare. But he left peacefully, and 3 weeks later, 12 young orcs stood at the academy gates, nervous and excited and ready to learn impossible things.
Welcome,
Master Alkthorn told them,
to your education in becoming human. But we're orcs,
one protested.
Biology. I'm talking about methodology.
He gestured to where Siren was teaching Rothgar's squad advanced reality negotiation.
Humanity isn't a species. It is a choice. The choice to be clever when strength fails. To be kind when cruelty would be easier. To find solutions that shouldn't exist. That sounds hard. The best things usually are. Now then, who wants to learn how to defeat a mop?
6 months later, Siren found Rothgar on the academy walls, watching the sunrise. His squad was with him. They were rarely apart these days. "Letter from your father," she said, handing him the scroll. Rothgar read, then laughed.
He's sending more students. Apparently, the first group was sent home that started a philosophical revolution. 3 clans have replaced trial by combat with trial by guided meditation.
Orc culture will never be the same, Kayla said softly.
Hey, good.
Brennett added.
That was Steve on an update.
Everything is, Nico said, and for once, he didn't sound anxious about it. They stood together, 5 warriors who'd learned that the greatest battles were fought in the space between heartbeats, in the moment of choice between violence and understanding. New students arrive tomorrow, Siren noted. We should prepare something special.
Sentient furniture?
Rothgar suggested. Emotional algebra, Nico offered.
Therapeutic flower arrangement?
Brannett grinned. Aggressive empathy training? Kayla smiled. All of the above, Siren decided. It's only fair. We suffered through it.
And look how we turned out,
Rothgar said. They looked at each other, orc and human, dwarf and noble runaway, light weaver and chaos speaker, broken in all the right places, strong in ways that couldn't be measured. Yeah, Siren said softly. Look how we turned out. Behind them, the academy woke to another day of impossible lessons. Students stumbled toward classes that would remake their understanding of everything. Master Elkthorn was probably already brewing his tea. This, then, was the terrifying and beautiful secret of humanity, the one Grothmog had stumbled upon, and Rothgar had embraced. Other races mastered the physics of war, the arc of an arrow, the temper of steel, the strength of a fortress wall. Humans, in their infinite and infuriating cleverness, had mastered the metaphysics. They would not only meet an army with a stronger shield, but also with a paradox that made the concept of a shield irrelevant. They weaponized compassion, turned doubt into armor, and treated reality itself as just another opponent to be outthought, reasoned with, or, if necessary, aggressively psychoanalyzed into submission. And so, the universe learned of a new kind of fear. Not the fear of a conquering horde, but the creeping, existential dread of an opponent who might just convince your gods they fear their own creations. It was the fear of an opponent who didn't want to kill you, but to change you. And in a universe built on ancient, unchanging laws, that was the most terrifying and ingenious threat of them all. The Human Knight Academy stood ready to teach the most important lesson of all. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be normal. You just have to be willing to grow.